You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context.
After Kamala Harris announced her bid for president, she reportedly raised a record-breaking $100 million in campaign funds in just 2 days. But her most culturally powerful endorsement may have come from a single tweet, as nearly all the Democrats rallied behind the vice president, offering her support in tweets and in TV interviews. One unlikely voice chipped in: the British pop singer Charli XCX. She tweeted, "Kamala is brat." That is high praise from a musician who released an album also titled Brat last month. Brat is not just a name, it's a lifestyle, one that is inspired by excess and the rave culture of the noughties. The typical brat, according to Charli's own explanation on TikTok, is just like that girl who's a little bit messy, likes to party, and maybe says some dumb things sometimes. But she is someone who feels herself and then also maybe has a breakdown in the process, but kind of parties her way through it. Perhaps most importantly, Charli chose a neon lime backdrop for her album cover. It was both sickening and sweet at the same time because it represents both the highs of a long night out and the impending crash of a hangover. Soon after receiving Charli's approval, the Harris campaign's official Twitter page @KamalaHQ changed its backdrop to brat green. Charli's song 365, which is an ode to bumping that, meaning beats and club drugs, is now the soundtrack to one of Harris's TikTok videos. Now, Harris is not the first politician to ride on young people and use their celebrity status to try and court the youth vote. It is like walking a fine line between A, speaking the language of Gen Z, and grasping them for their relevance. Millennials, for example, back in the 2016 race, considered Hillary Clinton's infamous Pokemon go to the polls line as peak cringe. Last year, Taylor Swift, who is of course an icon for Gen Z voters, urged her fans to vote in the primaries. She did not say who they should vote for, but just her saying that they should go out and vote drove a huge surge in voter registrations. And talking about Taylor Swift, there's been an unexpected inclusion of Swift in this campaign. J.D. Vance, who's the man hoping to be the next vice president of the United States, the man who's hoping to replace Kamala Harris, made a rather uncharitable reference to Kamala and women like her, calling them cat women or cat ladies, basically women who are unmarried and who do not have children. It immediately led to a huge backlash among women who are not mothers, and once again it brought back the focus on reproductive rights, on abortion, and a woman's right to control her own body. There were also memes with Taylor Swift's picture wearing a Catwoman dress for a photo shoot in a popular magazine. If Kamala gets Taylor Swift's endorsement, it would mean that her legions of fans would bring to bear their vote come this November. Swift's fans, who are popularly known as Swifties, are mostly Gen Z, and they have an outsized influence. Her tour last year, known as the Eras Tour, reportedly made close to $1 trillion thanks to the craze of the Swifties. So far, there's been little brat backlash against Kamala Harris, though people who are in a slightly older age frame, above 40, they seem to be confused by the Gen Z adoption of lingo and this whole use of brat phraseology. CNN's Jake Tapper, for example, he did a whole roundtable on this topic and he concluded that he will aspire to be a little more brat. Stephen Colbert, the famous comedian, he took up a brat-themed TikTok dance during his show, The Late Show. Memes do not win elections, but Charli XCX's tweet livened up this race. It got young people interested in a race which has largely been a duel between a septuagenarian Donald Trump and an octogenarian Joe Biden. But that was not the only Gen Z meme material that Kamala Harris offered. Suddenly, a speech of hers from 2023 in which she speaks to a group of young Hispanics and refers to a joke that her mother used to make about coconut trees and young people, that has also now gone suddenly viral.
Everything is in context. My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, "I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?" You exist in the context. of all in which you live and what came before you.
Suddenly, there are songs of Harris with her goofy dance, which Gen Z relates to, set to the sound of coconut songs. People were even changing their emojis on social media profiles to reflect coconut or coconut palm trees. But there is also a cold, hard political calculation behind all of these Gen Z memes and the brat phraseologies. Kamala Harris realizes the importance of the Gen Z vote. These are mostly students who are in college or those who may have just graduated. The general sense is that these young folks are mostly those who are disinterested in politics, but when it comes to issues like abortion or world peace, they tend to weigh in with the left. America was recently roiled back in the spring across almost all of its college campuses because of the Israel war in Gaza. The students there wanted to make sure that their voices were heard on Capitol Hill. So from Columbia University, where it started, all the way to Yale and Harvard, across the country, young students camped out protesting against Israel and its disproportionate use of force against civilians, most of them women and children who've been killed since the beginning of this Gaza war. Harris is counting on these young voters to show up at the polling booths in November. The Gaza war is also one issue in which these young voters, Gen Z voters, have been disillusioned with the Joe Biden White House. Kamala Harris wants to appear to the left of Biden on the politics around the Gaza war. Sometimes her comments have been indirectly seen as a rebuke of the president's often frustrating policies on how to stop Benjamin Netanyahu on this war effort. That's one reason why Kamala Harris, along with some other Democratic lawmakers, have skipped Benjamin Netanyahu's address to a joint session of the Congress this past week. Even when she met with Netanyahu one-on-one in Washington, she made it a point to tell him to stop the war immediately. And her comms team ensured that this talking point got made available to all leading news establishments. Clearly, they had one eye on the Gen Z vote. In fact, Kamala Harris's decision to skip the congressional address by Netanyahu has drawn criticism from Israeli ministers who expressed disappointment at her decision. Kamala Harris has emerged as a forceful voice, oftentimes in the recent past, on the Israel-Hamas war. She's one Democrat politician who doesn't shy away from discussing the plight of innocent Palestinians. In fact, in a civil rights speech that she made earlier this year in Selma, Alabama, which of course is associated with the historic walk undertaken by John Lewis and others, Kamala Harris garnered widespread attention. She called for an immediate ceasefire. She in fact assailed Israel for creating a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. The damage that's been done to Democrats has been acute, particularly in key battleground states like Michigan, where there are estimated to be up to 100,000 Palestinian Americans. A substantial number of those happen to be young Democrats who, in the recent primaries, voted against Biden, registering their protest. Democrats are hoping that Harris will be largely free of any stigma associated with the Biden White House and that she can win back those liberals who said that they would never ever vote for Biden, singularly because of his Israel policy. So in the course of the last week to 10 days since Biden decided to drop out, Kamala Harris has realized that she is a highly memeable presidential candidate. She dances in a loose but pretty enthusiastic manner, something that Gen Z can relate to. She has a very idiosyncratic way of speaking. She laughs very easily from the belly, as she says, including sometimes at her own jokes, and that has not always worked in her favor. That is up until now. Because now she has set the internet meme factory on fire. Part of her viral energy feels generated by the very topsy-turvy nature of her campaign itself. Because think about this. Until last week, she was at the broken end of a very frail and tired campaign by an unpopular incumbent president. Now, all that pent-up excitement which has come at Biden's decision not to seek a second term, she's hoping that all that energy and all those votes will come her way. It helps that Harris memes booted up right after Biden's disastrous debate performance back in June. It makes it feel like the internet manifested her candidacy to happen. Her Gen Z boosters are now feeling heady high with their collective power to actually make this candidacy happen. To use Gen Z lingo, Kamala and her band of brats are slaying it.